Ladies and gentlemen, it's 6 o'clock in London. It is 2 p.m. in New York because of the curvature of the Earth and time changes happening in one place and not the other. Why can't they have an ISDA master agreement for the process of managing the time, ladies and gentlemen? It's 1 a.m. in Hong Kong, 3 a.m. in Sydney. It's 10 a.m. in San Francisco and 10:30 at night in Mumbai. Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Patrick L. Young. The IPO-VID Livestream, Series 10, Episode 4, in cumulative mathematics. That gets us to 58 episodes. Starts here. And actually, we have got, ladies and gentlemen, a very special guest in the studio. So we're going to be back with two fantastic guests this evening. So what happened during the course of the last week? Well, for one thing, as you can see, I'm not in Valletta, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We also crossed through the threshold of the 2300th edition of Exchange Invest newsletter. Gosh, isn't that so exciting? I mean, that reaches the era now of Star Hunter 2300 for sci-fi fans, a fighter for science fiction justice against a background of weak governments and weaker laws, which leads us to wonder actually what difference there is between the current modern age and the 23rd or 24th century. Indeed, when you look at indeed the White House of today or the holy hoax fiasco of the National Stock Exchange of India. Good luck to the good folks of BMLL. We had dinner with them last evening. They are growing their US presence. We had the joy of meeting Tim Baker. It was really, really interesting to hear that their data lake has now got oceanic extremities with the appointment of Tim Baker as their senior advisor based in New York, taking the London-based fintech across the pond. Of course, no introduction would be complete without the mention of nickel. What can we possibly say about the nickel market this week? Well, I think it's a very simple maxim, ladies and gentlemen. When a market is open, not everybody is happy. But when a market is closed, everybody is unhappy. Let's just leave it at that for the time being. All this and more has been covered in greater detail in Exchange Invest Daily, the unique newsletter of the Bourse Business. Send us an email, hit me up, Patrick L. Young, on whatever social media you're watching this stream today. We will be delighted to get you signed up to understand better the business of bourses, and you have the opportunity to get a free 30-day trial. So in the studio today, we have two fantastic guests because not only am I joined by the incredible, the unique and brilliant Trabue Bland, who I will introduce in just a minute, who is therefore the man behind the title of this episode, Master of ICE Futures. In December 2021, it was announced that Trabue Bland will oversee all of ICE's exchanges. He's formerly VP of Regulation for Intercontinental Exchange, and he's most recently been the president of ICE Futures US. He also serves on the CFTC's Energy and Environmental Markets Advisory Commission. Prior to joining ICE in 2007, Trabue was the legal counsel to Acting Chairman Walter Lukken at the CFTC. He was previously a trial attorney in the Division of Enforcement and an attorney in the Division of Clearing and Intermediary Oversight, having previously served in private practice. So that's one fantastic guest that we've got here today, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm delighted to say, we're going to come to Trabue in just a moment. We are also joined all the way from the Middle East today by Jamal Ul-Haj, and he is the president of ICE Futures Abu Dhabi. Now, those of you with a long memory will remember this. About a year ago, I wrote an article rather. It was published in The National as an op-ed piece, The National being the daily quality newspaper of the Abu Dhabi Emirate of the United Arab Emirates, and it was all about the island of excellence that is Mirban Futures. So here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the man who took charge of the exchange that took 504 days to build. Jamal, welcome to the show. It's a joy to be here with you. Tell me, how are things going with ICE Futures Abu Dhabi?
Well, thank you for having me here and speaking to your audience. Things are going great in Abu Dhabi. Honestly, we are about 2 weeks away from celebrating 1 year anniversary, and I'm happy to say that we hit all the KPIs we set for ourselves when we launched the exchange. We did over 1.4 million contracts since the launch. We delivered over $80 million barrels through our clearinghouse in London. We have about 50 members that joined IPO-VID, and we have about 90 participants trading our markets. So I guess we're doing good.
That's absolutely fantastic to hear. I've got to say, I'm delighted altogether, and it's lovely to have you in the makeshift studio this evening that we have in Florida, which has been quite something, as you saw it being put together live in front of your very eyes, Jamal, just before we went live. So tell me, I mean, right now, you've expanded incredibly. You've got an amazing user base. I mean, you're talking about 50 members, participants. That's just sensational for 1 year. What's the future looking like for you in terms of driving the depth of the Mirban benchmark?
Well, we are, I mean, with the rest of the ICE organization, we're working really hard to bring in more liquidity to the curve. Right now, you can see pricing going for 8 months. Our open interest is increasing month after month. Our volume, we're hitting about 5,000 average daily volume, and we're working hard to bring in more participants and expanding the footprint of the product across all the continents. So we're working hard. Let's put it this way.
Can I jump in here too?
Please, Trabue.
So
it's great to see you.
I can't sit here for too long without talking. It's kind of my deal. And so I just want to say it has been it's a huge honor for me to sit in your hotel room, which is a little weird, but but we have a beautiful view of the beach. But one of the things I wanted to say about ICE Futures Abu Dhabi, which I find really interesting right now, is we're thinking a lot about energy security, and the place where Abu Dhabi will really fit into that is amazing. So, you know, right now we're taking off the 11th largest economy, just taking them out of the mix, which is Russia, and one of the biggest energy and metals producers in the world. And that's going to have to be replaced somewhere, and that really makes Abu Dhabi and the Emirates kind of the swing producer there, which I find absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from a standpoint of running exchanges and doing, being in the exchange business, it's kind of cool to be ahead of the curve like that. It's really interesting. So,
well, one of the things I think is really interesting about this, I mean, either of you can comment on this, has been the speed of growth in the IPO-VID market. And that's the thing that really drove my article last year, because I mean, you look at the original oil futures, they barely did a couple of hundred contracts. I mean, whether it was West Texas Intermediate for like the first near decade, you look at Brent crude, which obviously you guys own these days, but the original IPE was struggling to do like 750 contracts a day for a couple of years. And you just had this amazing influx. I mean, it was like you were born post-puberty or something. I mean, you automatically had, you had a huge number of connectivity. And it's incredible because you did it in 504 days during COVID, when most of you guys couldn't get over there to the Emirates to manage to go and do anything. I thought it was incredible.
It's the cool thing about, so what Jamal and I do is we run a network business. And the nice thing about having that network is we can plug other networks into that network. And so it already gives us a level up. So we do that with IPO-VID. We do it with the Houston contract, which we're doing right now.
Yep.
Both of them are great plays on energy security. So,
right. No, it's really, really interesting altogether. So, I mean, Jamal, you've been so kind. We literally have just bundled you out of the corridor into this room, which is fantastic. Thank you very much, Trabue. Yes, his previous history as a trial attorney, obviously, you know how to manage to get people moving.
Can I give the background to that?
No, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So for our viewers, we were downstairs talking. I happened to I got here early because I came over on the shuttle. And Jamal was sitting down there, and I was like, you know what? You're the one who needs to talk about your market. You got the cool new market. I run the old legacy market, and so let's get you on here. And so Patrick was like, sure, let's do that.
Well, thanks for sharing the time.
Yeah.
No, look, it's been absolutely fantastic to see you, and I sincerely hope that actually we might get a chance to see you for a longer period of time when in the future, and we can talk more about your market.
Anytime.
And hopefully, and this is a raw plug, we really hope that you're going to just invite us to take our production team to Abu Dhabi so we can make a show from there. That would be much more fun, I think, altogether, ladies and gentlemen, wouldn't it, in the near future?
You didn't get the invite for that one?
No.
I didn't either. I didn't get that either. I'm very disappointed. Yes.
I promise next year.
Okay. Well, we're going to hold you to it. I can see the viewers are already writing in and saying, well, we're looking forward to that in the near future. But Jamal, just give us one final quick question. So, Mirban, doing very, very well. You're really building that as a benchmark. I mean, it's become a traded benchmark from having previously just been a price set benchmark before ICE Futures Abu Dhabi. What's the next thing? What are you building out at the moment?
Well, we're looking at different products, across different assets, not just the energy. I mean, as you know, or Tribune knows, you can't run an exchange with one contract. We need more. So we already have the Mirban and 18 other contract whose the underlying is the Mirban, Crocs and all that stuff. But we're exploring, looking at carbon, looking at hydrogen, we're looking at financials, we're looking at different, and it's really depends on what our participants are saying. If there is demand, we'll make sure we come up with some viable product and have it listed and let people trade it. So that's key for us.
I was just going to say, I mean, the cool thing about Abu Dhabi is it is a trading hub. And so there's a lot of opportunity there. I mean, if you look at Abu Dhabi, I mean, it's a global shipping place. And there's actually some interesting things you can do there, and it's all about building that network. And you just build it on top of other networks. I mean, you're doing that right now in Gibraltar, which is we talked about before we did this live stream, and it's so interesting to build a market up like that. And you're building it around this entire hub, and the people in that country and that city are so excited about it because it puts them on the map. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I think it's fantastic. I mean, talking about Gibraltar, which is one historic mercantile hub, but I mean, Abu Dhabi has so much history going for it in terms of its commercial entrepot in the Emirates. Exactly,
and as Trabue said, this is not just an ICE initiative. It's ICE with their shareholders, with the regulators, with the government of Abu Dhabi. They're extremely supportive. As you can see, I mean, because of this drive to bring in business into Abu Dhabi global market, which is where it's the offshore zone where we operate from. And you see, like, for example, Reliance Energy, one of the largest companies in India, they moved their trading desk to Abu Dhabi. We see, the major oil companies moving from Singapore somehow into Abu Dhabi slowly, and it's only gonna grow. And I think we'll be there to make sure we're supporting all these companies to grow their business.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's a really, really interesting message to bring to us, and I absolutely look forward to seeing you in the future. And I hope you'll be back for a full episode. I hope we'll be in Abu Dhabi for a full episode. Actually, that would be just really groovy altogether. Well, I'm going to bring my friend Trabue. He's going to help me with that episode.
We're going to do a live stream. It'll be 65 or 66 for the F1.
Here you go.
There's an idea. There's a plan altogether.
We can do it from the F1. Pit. Yeah,
that would be cool. Yes. Well, I as some viewers will know, I actually have a sideline in motor racing commentary, although I don't do F1 these days. So there you go. It's a small world all around.
Yeah.
Look, what can I say, Jamal? I really appreciate the fact that you were kidnapped and brought into this room this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bailing me out, so I didn't have to talk all myself.
Yeah, good luck.
Yes. No.
It's been fantastic. Let's do that. Hey, you
My
take
pleasure.
care. Thank you
Thank you.
very, very
Good luck.
much.
Yeah.
It's been
All right.
fantastic, and we'll see you around.
All right.
So that actually lets us, ladies and gentlemen, as Jamal makes his exit from the studio and leaves Trabue and I together, let me just say hello to some of our, well, awesome viewers. Hello, Ian Bonsor. It's absolutely super to see you this evening. I'm delighted that you were so excited. You were talking about the show several minutes before we got going. Absolutely fantastic to see your participation as usual. Hello again to Craig Richardson. It's a delight, Craig, to have you watching the show. Really, really appreciate your support altogether. And yes, I think there were a lot of people who were asking how Boca was going. Well, that's possibly just jumping ahead of things, Ian, because I've got to ask the magic question by which we officially start our interview in just a second. Peter Second, hello, and I hope that the baby's well, Peter. I hope your son and heir, Ari, is in great health altogether. Marcus Ward, good evening. It's lovely to see you. And equally, Simon Huckle. I hope everything's going well in your world. Thank you very much for your messages. So, Trabue.
Yes.
Let me ask you, where in the world are you today?
So I'm right next to you in a very hot hotel room with a beautiful view of the beach. And this is for your viewers. So one of the things I dislike about Florida conferences is we come down here and I'm an inside person, and like I see all these people outside who are walking along the beach. And I'm like, how do I go from an inside person sitting here in a suit and a shirt to be an outside person? So it's an honor to be here. So I just want to make a slight plug here is that everyone at ICE reads Exchange Invest. And it's the one thing, and here's a quote actually from Jeff Sprecher himself. He's like, I don't know how this guy in Malta knows all this stuff about exchanges. He knows it before I do. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. He's got all of our offices bugged and things like that. So it is a huge honor for me to be here. And just one other thing I'd like to mention before we get cracking so I was really honored to make the Exchange Invest Top 1000.
Yep.
And so my son, when that came out, it was 2017, he was 12 years old, and he read it cover to cover. And he would go through there and say, well, why aren't you ahead of this guy? Why aren't you ahead of this guy? So I'm sitting here with you now. I got to be ahead of those guys.
You're going to be ahead of those guys. Think so. Well, actually, I mean, it's funny you should mention that because, Trabue, we are in production of the next Exchange Invest 1000. It's particularly well advanced. I had a few copies of the original edition which are with me in my luggage, except for the problem is that my luggage actually isn't with me at the moment. I and Mrs. Young are currently running around Florida, gradually trying to shop for a new wardrobe because somewhere out there between Miami and Boca Raton in Florida is actually our luggage, courtesy of Turkish Airways. Yesterday we had a really exciting message. Actually, yesterday somebody sent a message from Turkish Airways saying, "We just want to tell you that they claim you've given the wrong address and it does not exist." And I was able to say, well, the JW Marriott Hotel occupied a 38-story landmark building in the center of Miami at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I think maybe whoever the guy is, you might want to consider a little spot of retraining or possibly getting him to use Google. And then they said, we can't find your new address. And I was like, well, we're here in this resort built by Sol Meisner in the 1920s, opened I think in 1926, called Boca Raton, and it's an Art Deco gem at the main part of the whole resort, and it's pretty much world famous for all the people who've been here, but not if you're trying to deliver our luggage, it seems. So there's a little rant at Turkish Airways on the way through, but it's really, really interesting. I mean, you talk about the 1000. I got a meeting tomorrow with Lynn Martin, who I was delighted to see. I mean, I'm so pleased to see lots of people going up in the world. Obviously, I know what the results have been at the moment.
Do I beat her?
You're going up in the world. You're going up in the world, like I said. Well, actually, she was interesting because she was number 2 in our list of people to watch in Volume 1. So I think she's done pretty well in terms of our list of people to watch. I'm not sure you were in that subdivided list actually, and the people to watch. I'm sorry, Trabue. You might have been left out at that time, but yeah. So we're looking. Yeah, I'm delighted to see a message on LinkedIn already. Yes, we will have a new book. It'll be a new edition of the Exchange Invest 1000. It's going to be out within the course of the next few months, and it should be really, really an exciting and fun new edition. all about who are the top 1,000 people in the world of exchanges. I could leak a few names right now, but of course I'd have to kill you, dear viewers. So you wouldn't like that in any way, shape, or form. So that obviously wouldn't be something.
This is kind of breaking news too.
Yes.
So this will be kind of fun. But Dave Goon, who's was basically a co-founder of ICE.
Yep.
He's the one who came into ICE and actually knew exactly how a financial market worked. So today's his last day. So let's first of all give him a shout out. He was a huge mentor to me. I worked with him almost every day over the past 14 years. I'm imagining he was a higher than me on the exchange.
He was.
So can I just take his place?
Possibly.
I got to earn it though.
You know what? But it's a great point. I mean, you are going up in the world. I can absolutely assure you of that. And you get a few extra brownie points for putting up with an IPO-VID live stream as well, which is a good thing on this whole listing. But yeah, that's a great point, David Goon. All the very, very best. We're really excited to see what you're going to do now that you're going towards the digital asset world. I think it's going to be sensational. Your achievements within the Intercontinental Exchange have been absolutely incredible. And the team that you leave behind is quite sensational, such as those you have mentored, like young Trabue here. So it's impressive.
He called me last week and goes, you're joining 12 boards for me. And I'm like, what? I didn't anticipate that being added to my workload. But he called me this morning, and this is his first time in years not to come to Boca.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and he had this fear of missing out, and he was calling me. He's like, "What's going on?" So.
Well, we can send him some messages, I'm sure, as the week goes on, and let him know what's happening around and about the folks who are wearing their oyster bar casuals in the different parts of the resort. So. Okay, so let's take a back step. I mean, you were originally a full-on lawyer.
Yes.
You were actually a trial lawyer. Then you went to work for the CFTC.
Yes.
And that must have been an interesting experience. Ronald Reagan's favorite regulatory body, for those of you who remember.
Yeah, so it was a great place to work. For bureaucracy, I really loved working with the people there. I actually hated being a trial attorney. I worked as a trial attorney for a year. I got to come down to Miami, but it was all FX fraud cases, so nothing really good and meaty. And so I spent a lot of time in a windowless room making copies. And by the way, one of my great things that I can fix a copier and I can make copies really well. What I did enjoy at the CFTC, I worked in the division of clearing and risk. And I had an excellent mentor there, a guy named Ananda Radhakrishnan, who I really enjoyed working with. He had come over from Singapore, taught me a lot about clearing. And then I went from the division of clearing and risk, and I went over to enforcement. I love the people in enforcement. I still have friends in enforcement, and I'm shocked that they haven't called me on my phone, because that's their favorite thing to do, is call me on my phone when I'm doing some type of interview. And so I went to work for Walt Lukken, who's now the head of FIA, and I had the best time doing that. That was a lot of fun. And so I worked there up until a point I got a call from ICE. And at the time, I grew up in Mississippi, which has, it's a great place to grow up. It has about the humidity and heat of this room right now. And but I was familiar with Atlanta. And so no one else in the financial world wanted to move to Atlanta. This was in 2007. And so I moved to, so they called me, and they were like, would you, think about moving to Atlanta and taking a job at this place called ICE. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll take a shot on this. I talked to my wife. I was like, let's move to Atlanta. This seems like kind of a fun company. This guy, Jeff Sprecher, seems like a neat dude. And so I took the job down there. I interviewed. My interview with Jeff Sprecher, who might be the world's worst interviewer. He was like, why are you here, and what do I need you for? Which was an awkward one to answer. And I'm like, well, you're about to get hit with a lot of regulation, and that happens to be something I'm pretty good at. And so they hired me, and it was such a small company then. I was employee 400 and something. and it was it's a really entertaining time to be at at ICE. So I'm going to tell you two small stories. One of them is I was the fourth choice for them, and so I always point that out. It's like either you guys are bad at picking people, or those other three would have really rocked ICE. So the second one, and I'm going to tell you guys and the viewers here the secret to my success at ICE. So I had young kids at the time, and I started working at ICE in October. It was into October, so I worked through Halloween. And in the United States, everyone ends up with this massive amount of candy. And Jeff has he likes sugar. And but Kelly at the time had him not eating sugar. So I had this big thing of candy down in my office. And so Jeff would come down there and eat candy, which gave me the best Ask Me Anything ever known to man. So I had the CEO coming down here. I was the junior employee, but he was eating candy. And I could talk to him about anything in the exchange, anything like that. And it was we started a very good friendship there. I really enjoyed that period of working there. So
it's quite incredible. And I mean, you think about it, the ICE of 2007. I mean, one of the things I always say at ICE that's really entertaining is if you had frozen somebody in Aspic just after Boca, 2000 AD, and then unfrozen them again in 2020, they would have woken up and they'd have been like Woody Allen in Sleeper, and they would have said, so, what's going on in the world? Well, the biggest, the New York Stock Exchange is now owned by Jeff Sprecher. And they would all been going like, you're kidding me. I mean, it's such an incredible thing how the B2B business where ICE was maybe number 10, number 11, number about 15, and actually ends up being pretty much the only one survives and thrives.
It's really funny you mentioned that. So when Jeff first came to Boca, no one would talk to him, and so he was at the event I was at this morning, the Exchange President's breakfast, and he was in the buffet, and I can't remember who asked him this, but it was a pretty famous exchange president. And they said, "Oh, you're the guy who runs that website." That was how he's known as the website. So, but when I first started working at Jeff, we were a public company, but we were so much smaller. And so Jeff you'd walk into a conference room and you see Jeff fixing a chair, or and he was very hands-on. He ran everything. And that kind of set the tone for my career too. I was like, you have to be the hands-on type of guy. And if you look at ICE, and the way I look at ICE is I get to work with a management team of, I think, 14 close friends. And I get to do exciting things like throw bombs and try to disrupt markets. And I love that. That's my favorite part about that. About the job. It's just working with my colleagues, but working with Jeff and seeing like how much he cared about the business was really instructive to me. And like when I talk to someone who works now and they don't have that same passion, I'm like, that's not going to go anywhere. So
no, but it's very interesting because certainly there's an incredible passion that is driven ICE. It's very interesting how when you take the top tier of management of ICE, pretty much anybody could have gone to run an exchange. I mean, you look at the idea that, Kelly came out of investor relations, comms, and so on, and went off and built back. You've got Dave Goons now going off to do his digital asset thing. I was actually really quite sorry that in the end your CFO just decided to retire, because I thought he was looking to me like a really interesting CEO of another exchange. He
is super. He's a very, very interesting guy, but he, like Dave Goon said, watch his space with Scott Hill.
Scott Hill?
Yeah, Scott was a huge mentor to me, and he's living down in Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw him dabble his toes into politics.
Okay.
Yes, and he's very passionate about markets, but he's actually passionate about America, which is good. And so in fact, I called him about a business deal. He was like, no, I want to sit on my ranch in Texas for a little bit, and then figure out what I'm going to do. Yeah,
it's fascinating altogether, that whole management team and what you've managed to do. So fast forward, you're here, you're running the you were running US futures
Yeah.
for ICE until last year, which
Yeah.
is no mean feat. I mean, that's a pretty mega job for anybody.
Can I just say I'm still running it today?
Yes.
So I'm running it today, and yet I'm still for the viewers, I'm taking over as the global head
Mm-hmm.
of exchanges, and so right now I basically have two jobs. I'm taking over that, so I get a lot of phone calls about the oil markets, about rates, things like that. And I still have my day job of running the, and that's the way ICE works. It's so funny. It's just like, let's just see what we can add to this guy's plate until he.
I was going to say, actually, I think you're marking yourself out as an underachiever there, Trabue, by only claiming two jobs at any one point in time. I mean, it seems like you could be making a target for your back there if you're not careful.
Yeah, and ICE. I mean, I have to run the trade repository business. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. So you're coming into running. I mean, this is a kind of a new position where you're going to be the head of worldwide futures, as they've divided up what Dave Goon used to do and so on in his move. But I mean, that's an enormous, broad portfolio of stuff. I mean, roughly how many features are there involved, or how many different products?
We're in the thousands, but if you think about it, dividing it by asset class, we have every asset class from very small crypto, FX, metals, agricultural contracts, including my favorite. I always have to give it the plug: the frozen concentrated orange juice contract.
Great stuff. Yeah,
that is the biggest honor for me to be able to run that one market. It really is.
Yeah.
Energy, global energy. If you think about the breadth of our energy complex, which a lot of people don't realize, we list almost every basis point in natural gas in the United States. We have, well, actually in North America. So if you add Canada to that. And then you add our global portfolio with JKM in Asia and the TTF contract in Europe. That's a great energy portfolio.
And actually, if you get a chance, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this, check out, we had a great chat with Gordon Bennett a while back. He was talking mostly about the emissions business, but he's your go-to guy for a lot of the energy business.
And just to go back to what we talked to Jamal about, I mean, that's a really interesting story with our emissions and our carbon business. And it's another place where we built a market on top of a market. So if you start off in 2008 with the CCX, which we hosted on the ICE platform, and ECX. Those were tiny markets. They were so small, and this is going to blow your mind. In 2012, or right before 2012, we actually turned all of those products from futures into swaps. That's how thinly they were traded. Yeah. And then we turned them back around because of Dodd-Frank, back into futures. Yeah. So they switched both ways. And that market has grown on top of, it has really grown on top of our energy markets, but now it's growing even broader than that, like a rocket ship. And that's the beauty of running a network like that, is that we can plug these things in there.
Well, it's an interesting thing because, I mean, in the history of futures over 40 years, I think, if I'm correct, the only time essentially all asset classes went up was 2007, and then we had an almighty collapse thereafter. But the rest of the time, I mean, you're running a portfolio where essentially it is almost mutually exclusive that everything can be going up at the same time, right? Because it makes no sense.
And then, Patrick, from my standpoint, we make money off of volatility, and so the volatility always shifts around. And so I'm always chasing, the volatility. And it's so right now energy's very volatile, but sugar is not as volatile as it was 2 years ago because of the pandemic. And so it's nice to have this really balanced portfolio. I mean, when I talk to Scott Hill or to Warren, our current CFO, I always have something to kind of balance it out, which is nice. Yeah.
No, it's quite fascinating because you just cannot physically have everything being a bull market simultaneously.
But just back to the network theory, just one other thing. You would never believe this, but I mean, I have a sugar trader who trades WTI oil too.
Okay.
I mean, and those are his two products. That's the great thing about having those asset classes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. He trades on two different exchanges, and that's his that's what he does.
But it's great because then he can have very contrasting businesses,
Yes.
which he's trading at any point in time. So one of them should always be doing something, even if the other one's completely quiet.
And his exchanges, that's good too.
And it's fascinating because when you look at the way that portfolio was assembled, I mean, buying assets that other people, I frankly scoffed at the time. I mean, when Jeff bought and I bought, I think everybody thought he was out of his mind. And yet it struck me, I mean, even at the time, I thought, whatever it was, $250 million to buy yourself a full-on clearinghouse struck me as an incredible deal, because then it was all just a content play.
So there's a couple of things. I don't know if you've ever read The Outsiders, but that's very influential to Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how you make there's a good story in there about how you make an acquisition. And I think Jeff follows this, is that if he sees a deal he wants to make, he doesn't really get mired in the details. It's not going to be protracted. He's going to go in and take that business all over. And that was the case with NIBOT. And NIBOT was a membership organization, no real electronic trading.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We had to build that within a month, which is insane.
Yes.
Yeah. And take a market which was strongly resistant to electronic trading.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a very, very good purchase. We have built, and this is what I love about markets, and what I love about ICE and exchanges, is we were kind of democratized access to that. Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite stories, there's a trader who was locked out of the doors of another unnamed energy exchange when they had a floor.
Mm-hmm.
But to come to ICE, all he needs is a computer and a little Java
outlet. Well, there's two entertaining points there. I must admit, first of all, one of my great claims to fame was being thrown off the floor of NYMEX because I was arguably fermenting a degree of insurrection by pointing out the fact that I didn't think the floor had any future. I was doing it in a very friendly fashion.
I love it.
Subsequently, actually, was even funnier because the then NYMEX chief executive actually came to me afterwards and said, "I've really got to apologize because you were doing my job that day," trying to explain that actually it was inevitable. But clearly the staff hadn't got the memo at that point in time, let alone others. But the other thing, I mean, a more serious point I think is really fascinating about ICE, and this goes back to actually one of the last Bergenstock conferences that took place in Geneva about 6 or 7 years ago. And hilariously, on my panel, amongst other people, I actually had Chitraram Krishna, as I seem to recall. And at that time when we were in Geneva, David Pennicott was on, and he was the head of ICE in Europe. Yeah. And one of the statistics that really blew me away, and you're talking about, you just need a little JavaScript, blah, blah, blah. The largest, I presume this is still the same thing to this day, but I mean, the largest number of people connecting to the Intercontinental Exchange who connect to you directly are actually connecting through web ICE. I mean, they're connecting through a browser. They're not connecting through ultra low latency, high frequency, amazing dongle-licious technology.
It's the way we built the market. The market is meant to serve commercial users.
Yes.
I mean, and you can see it in the commitment of traders. We actually have a very different client base than our competitors. So they especially in energy, they connect to web ICE, and I just, it's really hard to say. I mean, it is a very democratic thing to be able to offer someone the same access to trade in Houston as in New York, or in my hometown in Natchez, Mississippi, in New York. So it's that to me is cool.
I think so. And I mean, it's all about trying to make the biggest possible market with the most people involved. And if you're not aware of what the Commitment of Traders report is, which I think everybody who's been a commodity trader knows all about, it's something that's produced weekly by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And it actually explains the kinds of holders of different commodities. So therefore, you can actually see who are the mainstream commercial interests, who are speculators, and therefore you can get an idea of how that market is made up. And that's something, as you say, you've always managed to keep ICE very close to the actual producer end of the market. I mean, the actual commercial end of the market for producers and users.
Yeah. So so for the people in the live stream. So Patrick and I had a great conversation before the live stream, and we talked about building a market. And I'm super excited to hear about what you're doing. But one of the things you do is you have to really reach out to the commercials and the producers. I can all day long get market makers to trade with each other. It's and you need those. I mean, they're great partners in a market. But unless you get a commercial user to do something that is very hard for them to do, which is put a resting bid or offer into the market, you will not build that market. And that resting bid or offer is them giving a free option to someone else.
Yes.
So they have to be incentivized to see that market succeed, no matter what incentives I do there.
And it's interesting because, I mean, you look at historically the sort of breakdown of all futures markets, very, very general basis. I've always been shocked because really only about 1 in 3 trades, if you're lucky, tends to go to commercial participants. So the actual people who are fundamentally involved in whatever the underlying commodity is, and that can even be money when you're looking at financial futures, 65% of it is essentially very often very useful noise, but it is noise. I mean, it's low latency, it's arbitrage, it's this, it's that, the other, but it's not actually fundamentally promulgating the economy.
Right. So, one of the, one of the great things about actually having agricultural markets, and, my background is actually closer to cotton, so I'm very close to that market, but we spend an inordinate amount of time with agricultural customers because their livelihood depends on the price signals that we send. And I have to take that job extremely seriously. And that's, the person who will take over from me and the new exchange heads across ICE. It's one thing I'm going to remind them. I said, it's great to go out and meet with a bank, and banks are very, very important to my market, but you really need to sit down and listen to the people whose every day depends on that price signal we send out. It's a sacred thing, and you cannot mess that up.
A sacred thing. I mean, I think that's a great takeaway altogether while we're sitting here talking to the master of ICE futures, Trabue Bland. It's a live stream from Boca Raton in Florida, the Rat's Mouth, where the Futures Industry Association will have their conference during the course of the next few days. And I'm here on behalf of various parties, such as the Gibraltar Stock Exchange and Valerium, etc. If you look at, your whole portfolio, it's obviously very exciting. I mean, to sit here, and we had Jamal earlier talking about his whole new market.
Yes.
And obviously that's thrilling, managed to build that. But how do you go about looking at your portfolio, and then how do you decide on things that maybe need a prod because they're not feeling so loved, or they're perhaps, they need revision, update, or how do you deal with that? I mean, it's like refurbishing a house.
It is. It's a great question, and there's some of them that have a small market, and I'm just like, I feel like I've got the right bet here. How do I unlock it? So I'll take one, for instance, is crypto, and so for crypto, we built what I think is the only end-to-end regulated crypto futures product. So with a physical delivery, and I felt strongly about having that physical delivery component because it sets the price. And I thought a regulated futures market should set that price. That bet hasn't worked. I mean, it's trades. I still think it's there. It's a longer term one, but it's one that, like, I want to unlock that. I see the value in having that it's the best place to buy a Bitcoin right now. You know? It's the cheapest place.
I was going to say,
it's like it's an RPC. I get a rate per contract. And so I find that really, really interesting to me. Sometimes it's cyclical. I mean, you look at different markets. The ones that you look out for or you worry about are the ones with long-term headwinds, and sometimes they naturally shrink. I mean, frozen concentrated orange juice, I don't think it was ever that big, but it's definitely smaller because not many people drink frozen concentrated orange juice. It actually prices citrus, but we've all gone sugar-free and things like that. So it's just a smaller market. And while that contract still does well doing price discovery, I want to avoid that type of things. But what the worst thing that can possibly happen to an exchange is losing. That's where the wheels come off the bus, and that's what keeps me awake at night. It's like if we can't set that, if we're not the trusted place for that price, there's no reason to have a contract anymore.
So you lead then into a really interesting question of trust, because there were issues a year or so ago at another place, which we don't have to talk about, but it led to Harold Ham coming to you, effectively creating a committee and looking to create a better oil market.
Yes.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I mean, this one I'm extremely excited about. So Patrick, in my hometown, there was one publicly traded company, it's Callon Petroleum, and the CEO of Callon Petroleum, he died recently, was my godfather. And so, but there was a completely Permian play oil company. And I remember talking to him because he always thought it was weird that his oil, which comes out of Permian, goes out through Houston and goes out to, was priced by WTI.
Right.
And this is the type of stuff that gets someone who runs an exchange so excited. So we see WTI. We've been thinking about this for quite some time. We're like, this doesn't make sense because it's going. The flow isn't to Cushing and then out.
Yep.
The flow is from Permian to Houston globally. And that's where it's going to go. I mean, especially now as we talk about energy security. And so so Harold Hamm came to us and he was frustrated with WTI. And we're like, yeah, we will definitely build this market. And that took a lot of work. We had to tie two basically competing oil firms together.
Yes.
And you met Jeff Barbuto downstairs.
Yes.
So he's about my height. So we're men of average height. But everyone at these two companies are ex-Texas or Texas A&M football players. I think. So they're all like a foot and a half tall. And he's trying to wrangle these guys. This guy from New York, had to wrangle these two Texans like from Giant together in the same room and say, hey, we can make this work for you guys.
But it's fascinating altogether. And so therefore, I mean, it's so interesting when you look at how we get used to contracts for years and years and decades and decades and decades. But then there is that sort of fascinating way you can tweak them or change them, whatever. But indeed, it did look terribly analog. I mean, the oil market. The oil market in 1985 was a totally logical market, which was essentially if the Soviet Union invades the West, then it's essentially all over anyway. But the benchmarks, which are the least politically manipulated, are going to be West Texas Intermediate and Brent crude. Right. Because by the time that anybody manages to, I don't know, invade London or something, well, by that stage, everybody in the UK is in the Cotswolds knitting their own sweaters and trading beans or something, actually reliant on frozen concentrated orange juice at that point in time. So that was a totally different thing. But I mean, the digital world has opened this whole multi-benchmark opportunity, which is where we get Merban, where we get the other things. But then you go back a stage and you go, well, hold on a second. These top tier domains, the top level domains effectively are no longer functioning. I mean, they're not doing the job that they were really set out to do.
It's so I'm going to say that I still think Brent and WTI have a place, and we have very robust markets there. But we are going through this energy shift, and what happened in what's happening right now with all the sanctions around Russia and just basically closing out the 11th largest economy in the world will have definite long-term effects on the energy market. And like, here's some exciting ones I'm just thinking about off the top of my head. And so competitors who are listening, don't go do these ones. But Calgary, Alberta, one of the largest energy producing areas in the entire globe. It's basically landlocked. Yes. And so they're building a pipeline to the Canadian coast. And so we have the physical market up there with this NGX exchange. And so that happens, and it should have happened a long time ago. A lot of you'd see a lot of
hugely political.
You would see a lot of Canadians driving around in Ferraris and Maybachs and stuff like that if this would have been done, because it would have been the Saudi Arabia of North America. And so you can export gas out to this hub. It might become the Asian pricing point. Yes. For gas. Yeah. I mean, these are some interesting developments that will happen because of this. But I
think you're right also. I mean, I'm not trying to deprecate WTI Brent. The point is they always have a position relative to the world. It's like London. I mean, no one can destroy the London financial center. I mean, when you've got 1,000 years of history, it's going to take you another 500 years to break it down, if that's ever going to happen. And equally, but it's just so interesting how the multiplicity of benchmarks have grown around the world. And that's something digital obviously really does for us so easily, because you no longer have to have 150 guys in the pit.
And you don't have to have someone in the pit, and you don't have people controlling access to that.
Yes.
I can put it up on the screen.
Yes.
I can clear it the next day.
And everybody can also see the price on the other screens, which goes back to your network point. So if you therefore have a Merban contract and you also have your new MAGA, Magellan contract and so on, you can have the same people trading that as they're already trading Brent.
Can I tell you just a super cool story? Yeah. So this is my favorite thing about the business that we're in. So I was at a cotton a cotton event. It was an international cotton event. A couple of it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I talked to a guy from Pakistan. He said, that the traders, and a lot of them are about horseback, and in the middle of nowhere, Pakistan, they actually look at the ice screen for their sugar prices.
Wow.
And I was like, that's super cool.
That is
Isn't that kind of cool that we get to do this?
No, that's phenomenal, because then you're reaching the point at which you've essentially got the same ubiquity as, for example, actually the London Metals Exchange, which is in the newspapers at the moment because of nickel and controversy and so on. But the truth is, that's the one place where, if you think of every possible city in the world that begins with a K, whether it's Kabul, Cushing, not Cushing, but Kabul, or it's Kandahar, or wherever it is, or the middle of Kent, people are also sitting there effectively relating to an LME price in their scrap yards as the basis for metal.
Exactly.
And that's one of the reasons why for many years, when it was independent, I was always saying, like, people would do these surveys of what were the best exchange brands, and I would always place like LME in the top 5. And people would say, are you out of your mind? I go, no, because actually, if you go out and meet anybody who's in the metals business, everybody knows what the LME price is if they're in an LME metal.
Without a doubt. It's a great franchise. And like right now, they're in a tough situation. And we don't know what happened there, but it's and they'll know. But I will 100% take advantage of it.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. Fortunately, we haven't yet seen Guy Hugh Evans thrown into the swimming pool. At least not on this end of the resort, anyway. So therefore, the chairman is obviously out there still meeting with participants in order to calm the waters. Thank you very much. Incidentally, we're having a few comments. I know you haven't been asking a lot of questions, but I can see you just gripped, ladies and gentlemen. John T loves the passion and energy in the conversation required for delivery. Very droll, John T. I like that altogether. You said absolutely superb. Got to have proper delivery rather than this cash settlement nonsense at all points in time. And we also had, I think, a great comment from Simon Huckle. Oh, good evening, Sashin Patel. It's lovely to see you too. And Simon Huckle, interesting listen. Great story about Jeffrey Sprecher, Trabue. Does ICE have plans to expand crypto products? What do you think of digital assets?
A couple of things. First of all, watch this space. I'm also going to plug my colleague Dave Goond. We made an investment in T0. There might be some interesting things going on over there. One thing about digital assets, I love the massive amount of enthusiasm there. And what I don't like right now is this dynamic in digital assets where it's more the fear of missing out.
Yes.
Instead of people wanting to invest in this really cool network, which I think can have a lot of value.
Yep.
And that's what I'd like to see is less of the speculative, and not speculation is always good in markets, but the speculative noise. I'd rather see more network building out of that. So, and that's where I think ICE will place its bets and where I find it really interesting. So thank you for the question, Simon.
That's really cool altogether. Thank you very much, Simon, for your question, for watching so regularly. So we're really running into the last few minutes here, and we've got the question to ask Trabue before we go any further. But I just want to say thank you very much for watching today. And I can see you're all gripped as we're seeing the messages coming through on social media about this excellent conversation. And it seems like good grip. Seems like more than 45 minutes ago that we were actually talking to Jamal. It's been such an interesting content-rich discussion.
I know. Well, thank you for letting me pull in
it was fantastic altogether. I was just sorry we couldn't actually manage to get Mika to come up as well. That would have been a fascinating conversation.
She has a lot of interesting stories.
Yeah, she would have a lot of interesting stories to bring as well from the Ice House. And of course, if you want to look back, I was honored to be a guest on the Ice House podcast many months ago. You can look at that amongst other very much more illustrious names than me, but it was a joy to manage to do that show. I think I was the first person to do it remotely during COVID. That was my claim to fame, because I couldn't get to New York. So that was why I ended up. So look, Trabue, Master of ICE Futures. The question we ask everybody. Actually, let me talk about victory or death just for a second. So it's victory or death, because that's actually the man that we've been talking about a great deal today, Jeffrey Sprecher, the greatest entrepreneur in the history of the exchange world, bar none. He wrote the foreword very generously to this, my current book on the future of finance markets and so on. But 20-something years ago, my original book, Capital Market Revolution, The Future of Finance in the Online World, book that Jeff Sprecher ultimately turned into a $75 billion franchise, which is absolutely phenomenal. Where do you think the revolution goes next? So
I had an instant answer for this when you gave me a heads up on the question, and I'm going to continue with that. So Mark Andreessen had a very famous quote. He said, "Software is eating the world," But if you really look at what's going on right now, its markets are going to eat the world. And we're going to see a lot more markets pricing things. That's, when you look at Web3, that is really building in markets to price things that, what's the price of my attention span on a social network? What's the price that that they're willing to spend for your, participation in any network? That's where these markets we're going to take over the world. And I think that's a really interesting place, and an interesting place for ICE to be.
Trabue Bland, the master of the ICE futures. Markets are going to take over the world. I love it, ladies and gentlemen. As a huge exponent of markets myself, thank you so much for watching. By the way, send us a little bit of love before the end of the show, please. I noticed we're only getting 1 heart through the whole of today's show, despite having a hugely interested and excited series of viewers. It has been an incredible discussion throughout the course of the last hour. We were absolutely delighted to have Jamal Ulhaj, the president of ICE Futures Abu Dhabi, sensational guest who just came along haphazardly by chance. We managed to meet him in the corridors of the Boca Raton Beach Resort just before we went live today, and it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you, Trabue. I'm really looking forward to future conversation with you, actually. We have got a very exciting show coming to you next week, and that's going to be success in the US alphabet of crowdfunding. We're going to be talking to Ethan Butler. Ethan is one of the leading people. And if you don't know your Reg A's from your Reg CFs, well, first of all, you can go back and consult our great show we had a number of months ago with the father of crowdfunding, David Veal IV. Ethan's going to be here to answer all your questions about crowdfunding, whether you're looking at Reg A, Reg CF, or any of the other cornucopia possible solutions that you can manage to get through the world of crowdfunding. Ladies and gentlemen, it only remains for me to say from today's fantastic show, a huge thank you to Trabue Bland. I know you're so busy today.
No.
You're looking after your 4,000 contracts and trying to talk to 1,000 delegates during the course of the day.
Well, what I'd like to say is hit that like button, because I'm super competitive and I don't want someone else to, I don't want to lose to anyone else on the likes thing. I feel like I'm a little low here. I didn't earn my lunch.
So come on, guys. I mean, we need a lot of likes in the course of the next 45 seconds in order to drive that home. I want to say a huge thank you to Ian Bonsor, Craig Richardson, Peter Secon, Marcus Ward, Simon Hucklebat, Young, and John T, as well as Sachin Patel for checking in this evening. This has been episode number 58, if I do believe I'm correct, of the fabulous show. Thank you, Robert Brown, as well. I see you making a quick comment late in the piece. Really, really enjoy to see you here all of these episodes. We will be, Marcus Ward. That's overkill. Yes, that's fabulous. We really appreciate that in every possible sense. So I'm going to be back next week with Ethan. You're going to go off and be president of ICE Futures, the world, from tomorrow, officially.
And we'll meet up at F1.
We're going to meet up at F1. That sounds absolutely perfect for another show. Good luck, Dave Goon. Thank you very much to the production team today, Armenia, Marianne, and Beata. This is Patrick Young, live from the Boca Raton Resort and Club, wishing you a great week in blockchain, life, and markets. Thanks for